Working as a croupier was certainly an interesting experience, and I'm so glad that I was given yet another opportunity to see a totally different side of life. You might say that I went from the sublime to the ridiculous. I'd been steeped in a human interaction on every level for the past year, and now I was in a situation here in England where I was unable to get to know people. On the plus side, I had challenged myself by learning a new skill, one that I'd never even thought about. In the process, I gained further insights into human behaviour and learnt more about my own character. I knew I didn't belong anywhere where I wasn't able to connect with people in an authentic manner. Within a few days, Chris and I had jobs in a popular Brighton nightclub called King's Club. Chris was a waitress and I worked behind the bar. My experience at my aunt and uncle's pub, the Baginton Oak, coming in very handy. If you think about it, no matter what you do in life, the experience is never wasted. Sometimes we're in jobs we hate and wonder why on earth we're there. That wasn't the case for me at the pub, by the way. I loved it there. Anyway, I guarantee that a little way down the road, it could even be several years later, you can look back on that work situation and say, oh, that's why I was in that awful job. It prepared me for where I am now. And hopefully that's a happy position, whether work-related or personal. We're all students in this great university of life and here to learn and to teach. I believe we're led on a path of self-discovery if we're only willing to take that path and not be afraid of the outcome. I'm reminded of when I was going for a hike in the mountains on Catalina Island in California. Before I started the hike, the park ranger warned me to be careful of wild boar and snakes, especially because I was only wearing tennis shoes, not sturdy hiking boots. He also said I should have had a bottle of water with me in case I got dehydrated. Well, as you can imagine, I wasn't exactly relaxed as I set out on my walk. In fact, I thought I was going to be attacked by a wild boar any time there was a slight movement in the bushes. After walking very tentatively for about 20 minutes, I stopped and sat on a large rock overlooking the ocean. It was beautiful and quiet and peaceful, so I decided to close my eyes to meditate. Then my peace was disturbed by a rustling noise beneath my feet. I jumped up as quickly as I could, fearing it might be a snake, and made my way down the path. "Oh, back so soon?" the park ranger declared. I told him I was afraid of being attacked by wild animals, so didn't want to go any further. He laughed. "Oh, honey, they'll only bother you if you threaten them. Pity you didn't go further up the hill. The view is magnificent from there." He also told me that if I'd taken paths to the left and right, I would have seen bison grazing, maybe a fox or two and a wide variety of birds. I was so disappointed that I'd been too afraid to venture further, and it occurred to me that this was a metaphor for life. Too often, whenever we're met by obstacles, we're afraid to go forward, and our inclination is to turn back to that safe place. We want to control every step, stay on the straight and narrow, when just taking a road to the right or left can lead us to unimaginable possibilities and unexpected adventures. Up to this point, I'd certainly had my fair share of adventures, which you've heard about. So I was mad with myself that I'd been too afraid to explore and experience the abundant natural world of Catalina Island, simply because I was put off by the park ranger's warnings. Back in Brighton, Chris and I were both very determined to get enough money together to go back to Greece. So as well as working at night, we also had day jobs. I did secretarial work in a bank and Chris worked in a wine bar. In April, we were happily on a ferry from Athens to Mykonos, arriving during Easter week. The holiest and most important time in the year for Greeks, the Greek Orthodox Easter is celebrated later than our Easter because they follow the Julian calendar as opposed to the Gregorian calendar, which is widely used by most countries today. On Good Friday at 9 p.m, there was a funeral procession, which we were told represented the funeral of Christ. It was led by a priest and other members of the Greek Orthodox Church in all their wonderful finery. They carried magnificent religious icons, and there was a large embroidered cloth of Jesus on a kind of pedestal meant to be his tomb, and it was covered in masses of spring flowers. It was mesmerizing and quite moving to watch, even though it was a solemn occasion. There was a totally different atmosphere on Easter Saturday evening. Everyone gathered at church with their Easter candles, and then just before midnight, all the lights were switched off, and a moment later the priest announced, "Christos anesti," or "Christ has risen." He lit his candle, which was apparently symbolic of the holy flame, and then passed it to others who lit their candles as bells rang out and fireworks were released. A lot of Greeks had come from the mainland, so Mykonos was packed with people celebrating this special time of year. It was one big happy party, and the huge procession of people carrying lit candles through the whitewashed streets was an amazing sight. The locals had to make sure their candles stayed alight because they used the flame to draw a cross above the front doors of their homes to protect them from all evil. Then, after 40 days of fasting, the Greeks were ready to tuck into their traditional Easter meal, which included bread topped with a hard-boiled red egg, signifying the blood of Jesus. Red eggs were in abundance and used in a game where challengers attempt to crack each other's eggs. The breaking of the eggs is meant to symbolize Christ breaking from the tomb. The person whose egg lasts the longest is assured good luck for the rest of the year. Oh, it was wonderful being on Mykonos at this time of year, not only for the celebrations, but for the aroma of baking bread, pastries and roasting lamb, which was everywhere on this Easter weekend. After the Easter festivities, the rest of spring in Mykonos was slow and easy. Chris and I went down to the harbour most mornings and sat outside at the Blue Chair restaurant. Yes, the chairs were painted blue. And we'd eat fresh bread with honey and yoghurt and watch the fishermen unloading their catch while the ever-present pelicans wandered around hoping a stray fish would come their way. New friends would join us for coffee, and we'd enjoy the peace and quiet of island life, which unfortunately was soon to change with the coming of the tourists. By this time, Chris and I had jobs at an English pub called The Anchor. Again, I was behind the bar while Chris served the drinks. The Greek owner of the pub, Foski, was quite a character, and he liked his booze. He was married to an Englishwoman, Hazel, and had a couple of children. He'd made a wise decision with the opening of an English pub on the island, since Mykonos was quickly becoming the trendiest of the Greek islands. We worked during the day as well as night, but we didn't mind the long hours because the pub was very popular and there was always a festive atmosphere. Along with tourists and locals, the Anchor also attracted the US Navy's Sixth Fleet, as well as passengers from cruise ships and private yachts. Even if we had a day off, if Foski heard that a private yacht was expected in the harbour or a cruise ship, Chris and I were ordered back to work. It was especially important that we treated the yacht owners and their guests with reverence, he said, which annoyed me because they were often rude and obnoxious. The singer Cat Stevens, before he became known as Yusuf, came into the Anchor with his entourage, 6 or 7 young men, and I remember they were all dressed in black leather, even though it was summer, it was warm. I loved the music of Cat Stevens and wanted to tell him how Moonshadow inspired and launched Sunset Hour at the EOS Club. However, he seemed pretty untouchable and didn't seem to be open to speaking with a barmaid, so I just let it go. It was fun having the US Navy in town, and Chris and I were always treated with respect by these young, gorgeous Americans. The cruise ship occupants weren't quite as congenial, and I have to say it, there were a couple of ugly Americans. You know the type. Hawaiian shirt and shorts, camera around the neck, big cigars, and they were just the women. I'm joking, of course, sorry, bad joke. You know by now that I love Americans, but as in every culture, there are always those people who give a country a bad name. This particular rather rotund American man insisted I make him a good martini. Well, since in England martini is an actual drink that comes from a bottle, I told him we didn't have any. "What? You gotta be kidding me," he exclaimed. He then instructed me on how to make a good martini, shaken, not stirred. It took me several times to get it right, at least in his opinion. And because he only paid for one drink, he got a pretty good deal as he staggered out of the pub. Well, at least he taught me how to make a martini the American way. Next time, escaping to Corfu and leaving the tourists behind. Thanks for listening. Bye.